This is Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Sunday's edition of the dceu Daily, where we will be talking about Man of Steel. So this will be a beginning of a series where I talk about and analyze every DCEU movie. So this won't happen every single day back to back. When we get a slow news day, like today, because there's nothing going on, so instead of me just repeating the same old shit, we will analyze the next DCEU movie. So we're going to start off with Man of Steel. Bat Super, Man of Steel, absolutely great little picture there, Bat Super. I love it. So welcome to Movies TV Mad and Sunday's edition of the DCEU Daily. So first of all, we need to kind of explain, because there's some people who simply don't get this, who kind of led the narrative of this film, who directed it, and who came up with the story, and who wrote the screenplay, because I think it's important. So Zack Snyder directed this film. What does that actually mean? It means the visual narrative was all Zack Snyder's, but he had nothing to do with the story. He was directing Christopher Nolan's and David S. Goya's story. Yes, the pitch for Man of Steel was from David S. Goya while he had writer's block on The Dark Knight Rises. And he kind of came up with this pitch of Superman being involved in an alien invasion story. Kind of Superman meets Independence Day. Pretty cool, right? I think so. So Christopher Nolan and David S. Goya both wrote the story together. And David S. Goya penned the screenplay. 80s Rewind at times, 90s, great movie. I couldn't agree more. And by the way, these videos will be about kind of even things like Wonder Woman 84. I will take a more critical look, but some of these movies will be about the love of them, and some of them I will have to be honest about. So anyway, right. So there's a lot of kind of commentary in this film, environmental commentary. So Superman has always had environmental commentary, and you may not have been able to see that, but basically the whole idea of Krypton is basically imagining that Krypton is Earth, and there's an environmental problem on Earth, which there is. Some people accept, and some people don't accept. They live in denial about it. They don't believe there's actually a problem. They genuinely don't. So they took, Siegel and Schuster took this concept into the origins of Superman. And so on Krypton, an environmental disaster is coming. Jor-El, a scientist, can see this. He's warning them. The planet is going to explode. It's going to implode, and they will not accept it. Now, I think they did a better job in terms of the Kryptonian council sequences in Superman the movie than they did in Man of Steel, but it's still there in different ways. So in Superman the movie, you have Jor-El telling the Kryptonian Council, this planet will explode within 90 days, if not sooner. 80s Rewind at times 90s. Mick, are you going back and looking at every DCEU movie from the beginning, starting off with Man of Steel? Great idea, if so, buddy. That's exactly what I'm doing. And so what you see in Superman the movie is the Kryptonian Council trying to intimidate Jor-El. You're not allowed to tell anyone about this. We're going to send you to the Phantom Zone if you start spreading rumors about Krypton having environmental problems. So Jor-El turns around and says, I will remain silent. Both I and my wife will remain on Krypton. Now, craftily, Jor-El's planning to send his baby son, Kal-El, to Earth, but he ain't telling them that. So in Man of Steel, they go at this very differently. So Jor-El, the opening scene is Russell Crowe's some of the best casting since Marlon Brando as Jor-El. It's something I actually suggested to the studio years before about having Russell play Jor-El. I wanted him to play Jor-El since I saw him in Gladiator. So he comes in, and he goes, do you not understand? Krypton is going to implode. Give me the codex. Give me the codex so I can save our race. And, one of the council members goes, are you suggesting we all leave Krypton? He goes, no, Everyone on this planet is already doomed. You can't, at such short notice, get everyone in ships and send them to other planets. It's too late for Krypton. But Jor-El's plan in Man of Steel is to put the codex within his sun, a kind of, a codex of 1 billion Kryptonian life forms, because Goya come up with this concept of saying Kryptonians are now all clones, that there hasn't been a natural birth in generations. And Kal-El, his son, is the first natural birth in generations. He clearly had this plan all along. He must have known that Krypton was facing environmental damage for many, many years. So he puts these billions of clones and life forms, the cells of them, inside his son Kal-El, sending him and them to Earth. So what's his plan here? Well, his plan is that eventually his kind of false ghost will teach Kal-El, Superman, to bring those life forms outside of him, right? And he helps the humans and the new Kryptonians live together in harmony. That's his plan. So let's talk about Michael Shannon Zod. Michael Shannon Zod is nothing like Terrence Stamp's General Zod. They're playing the same character. Who is Zod? Who is Zod? Zod was the hero of Krypton. Zod was Superman for Krypton. He is a hero. He is a military protector of the planet. But he starts to see the corruption in the Kryptonian Council. It's no different to what we see in the Middle East and countries like that, when these people, these guerrilla leaders, decide to rebel against their own governments because they can see what they're doing is wrong. 80s rewind to times 90s. Shannon Zod is ruthless. I agree. So he sees the corruption in the Kryptonian Council. So literally, as Jor-El is trying to persuade them what's going on here, he comes in with his people and he brings them down, and he says basically this council is done. So the female member of the council goes, according to who? Under whose authority? He goes, mine, and he blows her away. So he's a murderer now. He's no longer the hero of Krypton, but he's been pushed to this. Governments push ordinary people to this. So again, it's not just the environmental commentary from David S. Goyer. There's actually the commentary at looking at how a good person, a leader, a military leader who has been committed from the day he was born to protecting his culture and his people, has been forced into becoming a murderer because he sees no other way. That's the one thing he and Jor-El agree on, that Krypton is dying, and he blames the Kryptonian Council, as he should, because once upon a time, Krypton was believed in exploration. They were discovering new planets and populating them and trying to live with the other life forms. And then they stopped doing that. Once they stopped doing that, there was their core erupted. I mean, the film can explain to you that situation better than I can. So what they're doing is they're seeing the mistakes that we're making on Earth, and they're putting it in a Superman movie. David S. Goyer has got great quality. There's a series he did after Man of Steel called Da Vinci's Demons. It's absolutely fantastic. Some people say David S. Goyer isn't a good writer. Well, you stand The Dark Knight, right? You stand Batman Begins. You stand Dark Knight Rises. He wrote those movies. You can't have it both ways, unfortunately. Or fortunately, whatever the case may be. So basically, the history of Zod and Jor-El in Man of Steel is that once upon a time, they were allies. They were best of friends. And Jor-El respected him as the hero of Krypton. Maybe even his inspiration for sending his own son to Earth to do the same thing as Jor-El once did, being the protector of Krypton. And when Jor-El doesn't agree with what Zod's doing, when he takes over the council, he goes, I respect the hero you once was, not this monster you've become. This breaks Zod's heart. So when he tells them to take him away, he's not doing it with any glee. He's devastated that Jor-El won't stand by his side. Now, if you look at the relationship between them throughout the movie, you can see this. Next time you watch the movie, look at the regret he has throughout the movie when he gets Jor-El arrested, when he murders Jor-El. You look at this is brilliant performance by Shannon, because when he murders Jor-El, he regrets it immediately. But as he tells Superman later on, you know, when Superman says, "You killed him?" He goes, "Yes, I did." And there's not a moment that goes by that I don't think about it. So in other words, he regrets killing him. But he also says if he had to do it all again, he would, because he would do anything to protect Krypton and his people. And that's his point of view in this movie. He's not a mustache twirling MCU villain. He's actually got a good reason for everything he's doing. Now, it's up to you, the audience member, to say, should he be doing this? He's very much like Thanos in Infinity War, where Thanos was done so well. In Endgame, he was done shit. All that hard work was undone. I don't know why. You have to ask Kevin Feige, you have to ask the Russos. But kind of this film is asking you a question. It's obvious that the Kryptonian Council have led the Kryptonian people to this. So it's all about governments versus people, and how governments, through their selfish, ambivalent behavior, hurt the people they're supposed to protect. Zod was a good person, and through their decision-making that was destroying their home world, he had to act against them. And he didn't see any other way but becoming a murderer. Jor-El isn't part of the solution of saving Krypton, the Krypton they're standing on. His plan is to continue Krypton on the planet Earth. Zod has the same plan, but where Jor-El wants the Kryptonians and the humans to live in peace, Zod says, fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. We're just going to build Krypton on Earth, and the humans will not be able to survive. And I don't give a shit about the humans. I only care about my own people. That's a very, very right-wing attitude. And that is kind of the point of view that Zod is giving out in this movie. So if you look at this film deeply, it has a lot of depth. And as I say, David S. Goyer has great quality. And it was because Man of Steel only made $650 million that Warner Brothers moved David S. Goyer off the Man of Steel sequel. It wasn't originally supposed to be BVS. It was supposed to be Man of Steel 2. And David actually wrote a sequel to that film where they continued the arc about the Codex. We were going to see a Man of Steel sequel where basically Brainiac extracts these billions of Kryptonian life forms outside of Superman to use them as soldiers for his own ends. It was going to be a huge film, but they kind of got scared because of Man of Steel not making the 800 to a billion they wanted. So they got rid of Goyer, which meant that Nolan walked as well, because Nolan wasn't happy about this. 80s rewind of times, 90s, I felt Zod looked at Jor-El like a father figure. The way he spoke about his hurt and regrets, absolutely right. They were the best of friends. They were like brothers. It really is like the Lex and Clark storyline in Smallville. The only difference is we don't know their history. So that's why a lot of people who watched the film didn't really get that, didn't really see it. But if you've seen the film as many times as I have, I saw this film about 3 times in movie theaters. I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times at home on my own because I love it. I think it's an amazing film. The film is as compelling in the narrative as it is visually as well, and that comes from Zack Snyder. So, why did Zack Snyder direct this film and not Christopher Nolan? John, I would have preferred a Man of Steel 2 instead of BVS. Every Superman fan and fan of DC would say the same, John, because it was going to be an excellent movie. But because of the box office of the first film, I don't agree with this, by the way. I don't support what they did. But they moved David S. Goyer. David S. Goyer was the one with the DCEU vision, right? So basically, Man of Steel in the narrative isn't Zack Snyder's vision. So he went off and did BVS, continued it, but let's not forget, Snyder axed the Codex storyline. It was never referenced in BVS. It was never referenced in the Snyder Cut. Snyder wasn't interested in the Codex story. That's a big shame. And from the moment they went away from David S. Goya's vision, it was very problematic. As much as I love BVS, this is the truth. If they did Goya's Man of Steel 2, I think it would have been a bigger hit. Because guess what? David S. Goya's Batman Begins didn't do well in the box office either. But they allowed him to write. The Dark Knight made $1 billion. People understood what he was trying to do, right? But the problem is, Man of Steel made a little bit more than Batman Begins, but it cost double to make. That's why Batman Begins got the sequel and Man of Steel got a kind of sequel in BVS, but not the sequel that David S. Goya and Christopher Nolan wanted. And from the moment Goya and Nolan left, it was problematic because Snyder's brilliant, but he needs someone to police him, someone like Nolan, someone like Goya, and that was the problem. So why did Zack Snyder direct Man of Steel instead of Christopher Nolan? Christopher Nolan didn't believe he could make a highly stylized Superman movie because that's what him and David S. Goya were writing. So he went and got Zack Snyder because they share the same mentality in putting these characters in the real world as Chris and David did with the Dark Knight trilogy. The problem with Snyder was people still hated him for Watchmen. And that hate carried over to Man of Steel. But anyway, we get into this interesting situation where we go from Krypton to Earth. And it's very interesting because you don't get the whole Superman the movie thing in the spaceship where he's talking to his son or anything like that. He's quickly on Earth, but David S. Goya does a very interesting thing. He skips the Smallville era. We see the plane crash quickly. Then all of a sudden he's on a ship, right, as an adult. And they decide to do the Smallville stuff in flashbacks. When I first realized this, that we weren't going to land in Smallville and focus on Smallville at first, I was like, oh, I was a bit disappointed. But as the movie goes on, I actually understood what Goya was attempting to do here. And I really, really liked it. And I actually think that the flashbacks work for the way they made this Superman movie. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. What did you want me to do? Let them die? Maybe. So this is a controversial moment where people like one of my subscribers, Trill J, comes in and says, mentions this as a negative thing. So whether you like Jonathan Kent in Smallville or in Superman the movie or in Man of Steel, they all have one thing in common. They've always been a mentor to Clark. They've always been the one looking out for Clark. So what Costner's Kent is saying here, you are my son, and it's my responsibility to protect you. And if other people have to die, if you not saving a bus full of kids means you survive, then so be it, because your destiny is far greater than theirs. Now, this is very selfish, but he's a father. He doesn't care about the other kids. It's not that he doesn't care. It's not that he wants them to die. It's not that he's even teaching Clark to do it. So from a father's point of view, and I'm not a father, but I've got 10 nieces and nephews, and for me, I'm like their dad. I love them as a father, right? You know, I would be selfish about that. But this is what makes Superman and Clark Kent and Kal-El such an inspirational character, because he doesn't listen to his father, right? He stands his ground as a young teenager at that point. Basically, he doesn't care what Jonathan's saying. He's going to continue to save people, even though he puts himself out there. Now, this is important. Similar things actually happened in Smallville. Every time Clark would save someone in the first season, Jonathan would criticize him and saying, I really, really admire you for what you're doing, son, but you're putting yourself at risk. The only thing that's different is that Clark says in Man of Steel, what do you want me to do? Let them die. And he says, maybe. But the same kind of logical narrative is being done in Smallville. But people don't cast out that Jonathan. You know, John Schneider's Jonathan Kent is my favorite version of the character. But his mentality is no different to Costner's Kent. Unfortunately, people will never see it like that. Once people have got an idea in their heads, they don't let it out. 80s rewind the times, 90s. Kevin Costner was awesome in his role. Great choice. Costner is a great actor, despite many people not believing he's a great actor. He's a legend as far as I'm concerned. So that's my explanation of the whole controversial moment. So that's a very interesting flashback. But we also get David Goyer tries to put us in the mind of this alien who's living on Earth as a small boy. So we get that whole moment in class when the teacher is kind of singling out Clark, and all of a sudden, he has no control of his senses. This is brilliant by Goyer, by the way. So he's hearing things, he can see through people, and it's too much for the boy. It's too much for the boy. So he runs into a cupboard. And then there's this beautiful moment when his mum comes to help him. And he goes, the world's too big, Mum. Then she goes, make it smaller. Make it smaller. Pretend it's an island and find your way across to me. Or that, I'm not saying it exactly right, but you know what I mean. It's a beautiful moment. Martha Kent's relationship and dynamic and Clark's dynamic, their relationship in the movie is beautiful. Diane Lane gives the most beautiful performance, and she has great quality. And there's a lot of positivity between these two characters that the haters never talk about in this movie. But Diane Lane in Man of Steel, BVS, and Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut is absolutely the perfect Martha Kent. And that's exactly how she is in the comics, by the way. So she has great quality. And so she talks her son out of that cupboard. And it's a beautiful moment. We also see another great flashback, by the way. This is the moment where we're at the Sullivan place, right? And Whitney Fordham comes and starts bullying Clark. Clark's literally grabbing hold of a bar, right? So he doesn't hit him. So he doesn't hurt him. He's really trying to restrain himself because he's really losing his temper. Because this bully thinks he's in charge in this moment, but really Clark could batter him to death at any moment. And again, it shows what kind of a character Clark Kent and Superman is for not killing him. So we get a similar scene again. They reiterate this point in the bar when Clark comes to the rescue of the woman being sexually harassed by that dirtbag, right? So Clark says, look, if you carry on with this behavior, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And this guy's not having it. And even though he pushes Clark, and clearly it hurts him, and he realizes Clark's not to be fucked with, his male ego won't allow it. So he wants to entice Clark into a reaction. It's a bit like trolls do to me on the internet. They're trying to entice me into a reaction. And the more I don't react, the more angry they get. It's something you should remember about bullies. It's something you should teach your children about bullies. The less you respond, the more they hate it. And so in the end, he's pouring beer over him. He throws an empty can at him. Clark doesn't respond to his face, but then he destroys the man's truck. How he knew it was his truck is a mystery. We'll have to maybe ask David S. Goyer one day, but it's just a little nitpick and not a big deal. So the whole idea in this part of the movie, if we go back to him being on the ship and saving people, Zack Snyder gives us a brilliant visual kind of look of Clark's powers. But Clark hasn't fully got his powers. So when he's holding everything up and everyone's going in the helicopter, Clark's actually struggling to hold it up because he's not as powerful as he will be later on in the film. So that's a very, very interesting element that it differs from Superman the movie and, Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman and Smallville, where he's kind of as powerful as he will always be. But in Smallville, at least, his X-ray vision, his heat vision are developing slowly. So that's a really cool move. like what they did in Smallville, so we could slowly kind of see his powers being introduced, and it helped them with their production budget, of course, as well. So this is a very, very good thing. And then the whole idea of these sequences is Clark's trying to research his origins. So he's exploring the world, right? He's trying to find out more about the world that he lives in. And he's being a hero at the same time, but he's not Superman yet. In fact, a bit of a hot take, but Clark is never Superman in this movie. He puts on the costume, it's Superman Begins, but he's not Superman. He's not Superman yet. He hasn't learned to be Superman yet. Even in BVS, he's a little bit more closer to being Superman, but he's still not the Superman that we know and love. And even, really, in Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut, again, closer to being Superman when he comes back from the dead, but he's still not that character. What Zack was attempting to do, because he really is a fan of Campbell's A Hero's Journey, he was trying to give Kal-El, Clark's Superman, that hero's journey. But because it wasn't so blatant that this was going on, the audience didn't understand that. All the audience could see is, this is not the Superman that we know and love. We don't like this, that's it. People didn't look deeply enough at what Snyder was attempting to do. But Snyder really only had lead of the narrative from BVS. The narrative was being led by David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan. So things like Superman breaking Zod's neck had nothing to do with Zack Snyder. That was David S. Goyer's idea. Even Christopher Nolan questioned him on it and kind of was a bit concerned about it. But kind of David persuaded Chris that it was a good idea. And I kind of understand what they were going for. But once you have Superman breaking somebody's neck, it's going to be very difficult for families and children to watch it together. It's a difficult movie for families to go and see. That's how the box office was hurt. And this is what Warner Brothers decided to go from Man of Steel to BVS instead of Man of Steel 2. But what I don't understand about Warner Brothers, surely they understood that Snyder's take was darker than Goyer's take, that this was only going to make the situation worse. As much as I love MOS and BVS, it didn't make sense that they weren't policing Snyder. It was a bit odd, considering how they policed him while he and Chris Terrio were writing the script for Zack Snyder's Justice League. So that's very interesting as well. But a lot of things about Warner Brothers just don't make sense. And so we go through this movie, and when basically Clark discovers the ship, he meets Jor-El's False Ghost. You get a wonderful history lesson, as you would do in 2 or 3 movies' time in the first Wonder Woman movie. And we learn about the history of Krypton. So because he's activated the ship, it sent a message to General Zod, who's in space in another Kryptonian ship. So we get this whole amazing bit when basically we first see Henry in the Superman costume. And it's so good. They're in the Arctic. And at first he's jumping. Because in the original Action Comics, Superman couldn't fly. He was jumping from skyscraper to skyscraper. So Zack really cleverly is trying to represent that moment. A moment a lot of fans don't actually accept. So actually, there's a lot of moments that reflect the comics. But people don't want to believe it. Fair enough. So he then starts flying, but he doesn't articulate the flying. So he falls to the floor. And he can still hear his father. So you get this great moment when he's on his feet, he's kneeling, right? He closes his eyes. It's such an operatic moment. It's such a Shakespearean moment. And then he flies. And he's mastered it. And he's smiling because he's flying. He's enjoying himself. Yes, Snyder's Superman, Goyer's and Nolan's Superman does smile. Despite all the propaganda from the haters from MCU stands. He does smile in the movie. But there's nothing wrong with Superman not smiling for an entire movie. It would look pretty stupid if he's smiling for a fucking 2.5 hour, the entirety of a 2.5 hour movie, right? Imagine if I just sat here. Mick, you don't smile enough. Okay. Are you happy now I don't smile enough? I'm smiling all the time now. It looks fucking ridiculous, doesn't it? Exactly. And that's what these idiots were asking Henry's Superman to do. And so you get that amazing moment. Then we go to Lois Lane, Amy Adams, and she's on this mission because he saved her life on the ship. So she's trying to investigate him. So basically, she finds out that he grew up in Smallville. Somehow she found it out, and she starts asking questions. That's super. Superman doesn't even smile all the time in the comics, but the haters refuse to admit that. Yeah, who smiles all the fucking time? It would be fucking ridiculous. Man of Steel isn't even that dark of a movie. There's actually gags, there's great moments between Clark and Lois. There's lots of great moments in this film. Man of Steel was a good movie and a great launching pad. And it was controversial having Superman kill, but they would have got away with it in a sequel. As Henry explains it, because Henry's not a big fan of how Superman was represented in BVS. Henry's not a big fan of BVS because he knew he was going to get his sequel. Then they gave him this sequel. He's not really the biggest fans of BVS, and even when he talks, you can hear that. I love BVS, but I think we can understand why it's problematic for Superman. So we get this moment, this cool moment, when we get this kind of television interference, and General Zod is speaking not just to America, but the whole world in every possible language. And he explains to them, you know, one of my people has been hiding on this planet. And basically, I won't say in the exact dialogue because I can't remember it, but basically, if you don't hand this guy over, I'm going to fucking blow you up to smithereens. What he's not telling people is that he's going to do that anyway with the world engine. He's going to change the Earth's environment to make it acceptable for Kryptonians so they can live on the planet instead of humans. So he's going to kill them all, whatever happens. It's a double bluff from Zod. So as Clark says to the priest, and I love the moment in the church where he goes, if handing myself into the humans means I can save Earth, shouldn't I do it? And then he says, but I don't think people can be trusted, just like Zod can't be trusted, basically. So this guy is this is a really sharp Clark Kent. Because we see what happens in BVS. This is a narrative actually for BVS as well, where he's betrayed by people. When we see the Senate office or whatever it is, the Capitol building exploding, everyone just assumes because the direction the media are going in, and media plays a big part in BVS because it shows you how the media stir up a hornet's nest. And Snyder and Terrio did a really good job there. BVS has got great quality, don't get me wrong. So he decides to hand himself in. And then we get a really great moment in the interrogation room between Lois Lane and Superman. And it's really actually lots of jovial moments because he's wearing handcuffs, even though he can break them at any moment, just to make people feel safe. I mean, I'm surprised even they don't realize he can break out the cuffs. Actually, when I first saw the trailer and I saw him in cuffs, I assumed they were kryptonite cuffs. That's why he was in them in the first place. But anyway, she goes, why are you wearing this? Why did you let them cuff you? He goes, well, if it makes them feel safer, all the better. So this is a really great version of Superman, by the way, but he's not really Superman yet. This franchise, the Snyderverse, is a slow Superman story. BVS is part of Superman's arc. The Justice League continues Superman's arc. Justice League 2 would have continued that, and in Justice League 3, he would have let out the humans and the metahumans together. So everyone was going to be the Justice League. It was going to be a great unification and something amazing by Zack. But people lost their patience because all people ever do, the MCU. But what about the MCU? And it's so thick, it's basic behavior. So, yes, basically Superman dresses up and stands up and decides to fight his own people. He decides to take the side of the human race. And it becomes, from that moment on, it becomes an epic alien invasion movie. And it's great. So basically, Superman does hand himself in to General Zod. And these are great moments because when he goes onto the ship, he's bleeding because he can't handle the environment. And Zod is explaining it very cleverly. What he doesn't realize later on when he comes to Earth, he won't be able to handle the Earth's environment either. It's very interesting. Now, this is, again, shows you what great quality Goya has. because he shows us that the Kryptonians can't handle Earth's environment. And it shows us that, as an alien or a human going to space, right, you wouldn't be able to handle that environment. Because Lois is there with them. So she has to put the helmet on. She would start bleeding. She could probably die. So that's the whole thing. Because the reason they want Lois to accompany him, because they know he's kind of spoken to Lois. And they want to, basically, they don't have to get you to say anything. All they have to do is read your mind. They have machinery to read your mind. They do it to Clark when Zod and Clark are at the Kent farm, the imaginary Kent farm. And he's extracting information out of Clark as he's speaking to him. It's very clever by Goya. So that moment, Zod's saying, join me, help me do this. And Clark's not willing to do it because he's lived as a human. He's lived with the humans. He was raised by humans. His loyalty is to humans, not to Kryptonians. And I've given this kind of analogy before. It's like me. I was born in the UK, but my parents were Greek Cypriot. So I never really felt loyalty to Greek Cypriots. I always supported England rather than Cyprus because I was born and bred in the UK. I went to school in the UK. I feel British, even though you could say I am a Greek Cypriot. My DNA is Greek Cypriot, not English. But I always felt that loyalty to the UK over Cyprus. Even though I love the Cypriot culture and all of that, and I love my uncles and aunts and, and all of that. Because I was born and bred in the UK, I felt English, and people always said to me, but they don't see you as English. I said, it doesn't matter how they see me. It only matters how I see myself. And this is why I've always kind of gravitated towards Superman. That's where I feel I had something in common with Superman because he's a Kryptonian with Kryptonian DNA, but his loyalty is more as a human than a Kryptonian. And I've always kind of seen that as me because I always kind of was mixed. In England as a kid, I was called a foreigner, but I didn't feel like a foreigner. And this is the kind of thing that happens to Superman in BVS as well, where the humans turn on him and see him as an alien and not a human being, but that is not how he sees himself. So just like me, when I said it doesn't matter how you see me, it matters how I see myself. This is what Superman does at the end of BVS. And we'll get to that film on another day. When he sacrifices himself, he says, it doesn't matter how they see me. This is my world. You are my world. It doesn't matter how much you hate me. I love this place and I love you. And if I have to die to protect it, that's what I'll do. I'm not going to allow Wonder Woman to grab the Kryptonian spear, even though it won't hurt her, because ultimately Doomsday could end up killing her, right? She may not survive. I don't want Wonder Woman to die when I can do it. I can sacrifice myself, and Wonder Woman and Batman can go on and protect this planet. And they can see what I've done and lead on from that. That's the idea there. And it's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. So David S. Goyer wrote a great script here. So he hands himself over to the Kryptonians. And as I say, it's from that moment. And then there's this brilliant moment, by the way, where we have the iconic Amy Adams, critically acclaimed Amy Adams with critically acclaimed Russell Crowe in a scene. Because if you cast these two iconic actors, you want to see them together. That's one of my favorite scenes in the whole DCEU. They're so good together. And I wish they had longer together. It didn't make sense for them to have longer together, but that scene is absolutely fantastic. So Jor-El is trying to kind of teach Lois how to defeat the Kryptonians, or how to tell Cal to defeat the Kryptonians. I love the way he calls his son Cal and not Kal-El, because you get that a lot in the comics, where lots of people like the Legion don't call Superman Clark or Superman. They call him Cal. And I love people calling him Cal, because even in a lot of the animated Justice League shows, they called him Cal, which I think is really, really cool. And so she teaches him, and it's a great sequence. So she escapes. And then, when Jor-El, the false ghost of Jor-El, and Superman are reunited, he goes, he says, Zod told me that, your plan was to take over Earth. He goes, I wanted you to learn what it was to be a human first, and I wanted you to live together. And I love that bit. And it's actually a theme through the Snyderverse, actually entirely. And then he sees Lois, kind of ship floating down to Earth. And Clark says, Lois. And Jor-El goes, you can save her. you could save all of them. This is such a pure Superman moment, and it always makes me tear up. It's so emotional. Then Clark goes like this, spreads out in space, and he goes to save her. Another epic moment. 80s rewind at times 90s. Damn, Mick, you're making me want to go watch the movie right now. Love your interpretation of the film, man. I can feel your love for DCEU movies. I love DC live action in general. I love DC in general. It's just a really great thing. And yeah, so he puts Lois down. They're about to kiss, but then he kind of can hear his mum being bullied, kind of and battered a bit by Zod. So we get this great moment where they're trying to get the codex, and he's being really aggressive to Martha. Then because this is not Superman yet. This is a very reactive Clark Kent. This is a very reactive and passionate Kal-El. So he grabs Zod, and they're flying through Smallville, and he goes, "You think you can threaten my mother? Boof, boof, boof." This is exactly how you and I would react if someone was threatening our mums, and I absolutely adore that moment. It's such a human moment. Now, of course, the haters say, "Oh, you know, this is not Superman. He's letting the petrol station blow up." People probably died in that moment because Superman. Hang on a minute. Né? Olha lá. Ah, infatti, fai come? Non è che il nome, fai solo parola. Non ti cala. Ne fate le picate la settimana? Ah, infatti. Che sta a me, ti da fare? Da fare Facebook bem. Oh, infatti. Fai solo parola. E per il specchio che c'è, ti sta. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry about that. Someone just brought me some food. As much as I appreciate about it, it's just interrupted my video. Right, Sean Lee, Miss Henry Cavill as Superman. We all do, Sean. And I'm so supportive of him as Superman. I do believe the DCEU is broken. I do believe it's a mess. I believe it's a situation that happened from the moment David Goyer and Christopher Nolan were driven away from the franchise, and also from the moment Zack Snyder was driven off the franchise. Because if Chris and David and Zack continued to work together after Man of Steel, I think we would have had an almighty franchise. And just ignoring what people were saying about Man of Steel and just carrying on, I think more and more people would have supported that franchise. So, as I say, you get a lot of great action set pieces, and you get this beautiful moment later on in the movie as we go through all the action. And basically, there's a really good moment. And there's this actor who used to be in Smallville. He played a very small role in Smallville. And he's there with General Swanwick, and they're at the army headquarters. And he goes, "They've got Superman in tow." The first time you hear the word Superman. And so Swanwick goes, "Superman? Oh, that's what they're calling the alien." I love it. So all of a sudden, Colonel Hardy, Superman, Lois are talking about what they're going to do. They're going to use his spaceship to use it as a kind of force field to send the Kryptonians back to Krypton. And of course, Lois makes the point. If it weakens them, won't it weaken you? And he goes, "Well, that's the risk I'm going to have to take." Again, that's Superman being a hero. Sean Lee would love to see him fight Black Adam than other CGI villains. Look, that would be awesome. And a real studio would have made sure all this was happening many years ago. I'm afraid they're creatively bankrupt. They shouldn't be in their jobs. I say this every day. And so Superman has to go and fight the world engine, because that's how he's going to do it. But it's one of the most emotional moments in the movie, because Superman is struggling. He's fighting this thing. So in a moment that's the most Superman-y thing I've ever seen in live action, not number one, but one of them, is when that music goes and he's struggling and he goes, "Argh!" It's such a great moment because it shows you the determination of Superman, the passion to protect people. He doesn't want one person to die. And what would have happened in David Goya's sequel? Superman would have probably gone to graveyards. He would have regretted all the damage, the collateral damage that was done in Man of Steel. We didn't get an acceptance from Superman that he's killed someone before, he will never do it again, and the regret he had for people dying. And seeing that as part of his failure would have been an awesome thing to do. And I think it's something David Goya would have touched on in a Man of Steel sequel. But Zack didn't touch on this. And I think that was a mistake for sure, because it brings you up for criticism that you don't value human life. Snyder can say, yeah, get the fuck real, get real and all that. But ultimately, what that actually does is it kind of, it makes Superman look like he doesn't care. He doesn't value human life. To the simple mind, to us that more can see it as it is, we can understand it. But there you have it. So there were some mistakes made in BVS in terms of Superman's character and hero story. Because nobody could see they were doing a hero's journey. Snyder had to go on Vero to explain it. And when you're having to go on Vero to explain things, that's a bit of a problem. So you get this brilliant moment when he destroys the world engine. And of course, they're trying to extract the codex from him, which they failed to do. And so basically, Zod's plan fails. But that's not the end of the story, because then you get this excellent fight between Zod and Superman at the end of the movie. Some people don't like the fact that it results to just, a big boss battle between a hero and Zod. And I can understand that, but you have to climax it somehow. Personally, Zod would have been sucked through to the Phantom Zone like the other Kryptonians and the other people. The first sequence in my Man of Steel sequel would have been in the Phantom Zone, where we could see Colonel Hardy, we can see the Kryptonians all there, right? And they're just trying to survive the Phantom Zone. It could have been a continuation. You didn't actually have to kill Zod. He could have been sucked through to the Phantom Zone as well. But for some reason, Goya wanted Superman to kill. And now I understand why. Because he wanted Superman to know what it was like to kill, so he would never kill again. Now, unfortunately, because Goya his script wasn't implemented, his Man of Steel sequel wasn't implemented, and it was BVS, and it was Terrio's script, right? That Terrio criticized Goya's Man of Steel sequel script, but that's bullshit as far as I'm concerned. I don't agree with Terrio on that. So as I say, in the sequel, we would have seen that Superman saying, I've killed before. I know what it's like. I never want to kill again. So we would have had these story beats stepping over in a Man of Steel sequel, which would have been absolutely fantastic. But it is a brilliant fight, and him killing Zod was a shocking moment, but you can't do that to Superman. That was a mistake. But if you allowed Goya to continue what he was doing in Man of Steel, we would have seen the thread, and we would have understood why Goya had him killed in the first place. But because Goya was ejected from the franchise, that became very problematic. Warner Brothers and Kevin Sugihara were reactive, and that destroyed the entire vision, because the DCEU vision didn't begin with Zack Snyder's vision. It began with David Goya's vision. And just like he did an epic trilogy for The Dark Knight, he would have done an epic Superman story beat as well. But because the movie didn't do so well, Warner Brothers said, okay, Zack, it's your turn now. And Zack was better off working with Chris and David as just a director, right? That would have been a better thing. That's the strength of Zack Snyder as a director, visually doing something compelling while Nolan and Goya are doing their thing. That's why Man of Steel, for me, is superior to BVS and is superior to even the Snyder Cut. I love the Snyder Cut, but imagine Nolan and Goya writing that script while Snyder's directing a Justice League movie. It was the perfect partnership, and that's why Man of Steel works. And even if we talk about the mainstream audience, even though enough of them didn't watch the movie, in fact, when you talk to people from the mainstream, yeah, I liked Man of Steel. Lots of people will say, I didn't like this or that about it, but actually, it's a really cool movie. And actually, it's more, of course, people who support Snyder are fighting for Man of Steel 2, but I think more Man of Steel fans who appreciated what kind of Goya and Nolan did with the first film, alongside Zack's visionary visuals, right? It was a great team. And that's why that movie worked better than any other DCEU movie. Whether we're talking about the Snyderverse, whether we're talking about the bastardized DCEU, the Hamadaverse, the mistakes were made just after Man of Steel. You accepted Batman Begins making a low box office. If you accepted the same thing with Man of Steel, the DCEU would have been in a very strong position right now. Sean Lee, the final battle in BVS is the most intense and gruesome in superheroes moviedom. It is. There's nothing wrong with it. I love it. I love BVS. But unfortunately, BVS should have been Man of Steel 2. Right? Even though BVS is kind of Man of Steel 2, it's not the Man of Steel 2 they should have done. They should have kept David Goyer. That was the same mistake. That was the mistake that destroyed the journey of the DCEU. As I say, Snyder was doing some great things, but it was never going to work in a mainstream universe. And they're my faults of Man of Steel. And finally, just talking about the very ending, where we get this whole thing. Clark has decided to become a journalist because no one will notice him investigating and things like that. That's who Clark Kent is, even in the comics. And then we get this bit of levity between Clark and Lois. They both know who he is, and they're sharing a joke. Welcome to the planet, meaning welcome to the planet, not just welcome to the Daily Planet, which is really, really cool as well, by the way. And then they smile at each other, and Henry gives that beautiful smile that Henry often gives. And we're all ready for a more lighter Man of Steel sequel, right? It's going to be dark, it's going to be Wrath of Khan, it's going to have a lot of good stuff. But everyone, mainstream fans, comic book fans, would have been coming for that movie, coming to enjoy it. The reason the DCEU is fucked now was the decisions they made after Man of Steel. And I think, as much as I love BVS, it's such a divisive movie to the mainstream audience. And if they didn't go the BVS direction and they went the Man of Steel 2, the Man of Steel 2 direction, I think the DCEU, as I've already said, would have been in a much stronger position. So, although I love BVS, BVS was a mistake for a Central Universe movie. That's something Zack could have done on his own in an Elseworld after they finished doing this arc, right? It's something he could have saved for a rainy day, but from the moment they drove Nolan and Goya out of the franchise, it was already dead. Sean Lee, we are grateful to have Man of Steel after the disappointing Superman Returns. Well, listen, I don't want to compare Superman Returns to Man of Steel because I like Superman Returns. Is it the greatest movie of all time? Is it the greatest superhero movie of all time? Is it the greatest Superman movie of all time? Not even close, but I enjoyed it. And I've spoken about Superman Returns. If they actually kept the Return to Krypton sequence, the stunning Return to Krypton sequence in it, that film would have been a lot more understood within its narrative and would have been a much better film. Go and watch the Return to Krypton sequence. It's on YouTube. It's fucking stunning. So I'm not here to put one film against the other. I'm telling you my thoughts about Man of Steel. If they're your opinions, they're your opinions. Absolutely. This is an opinion-based platform, and I understand. But it's not something I want to do because Superman Returns at the time gave me a lot of joy. The build-up to any Superman film gives me a lot of joy. So I'm not going to stab that film in the back and compare it to another film because I grew up with Superman the movie. That was my first movie, right? And I'm not going to start comparing that movie to Man of Steel because I think it's toxic. And I don't think nobody wins. Nobody wins in talking about films, putting films against each other, which this era and this generation of movie conversation do. And I find it very basic behavior and very boring. But anyway, that is my kind of thoughts on Man of Steel. And something else, the score by Hans Zimmer is fucking amazing. It's a score you wouldn't really expect from a Superman movie traditionally, but it works. It really does work in every shape or form. So next time we do this, we will be talking about Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. This has been the DCEU Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives, please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again tonight about 6 p.m. UK time for Movies TV Mad Live, where you can give me your opinions, your questions, and I will respond to them. So sorry about the interruption with the food and stuff, but we got there eventually. So until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the support. Thanks for the views. Thanks for the likes. See you tonight. Be there or be square.